So asking AI questions is fine, but then it just acts like a search engine and you just get generic answers. But if you want AI to actually do some real work for you in construction, you need to stop asking questions and start thinking in workflows. So today I'm going to show you what that looks like. And I built a skill for one of the most painful workflows in construction where a lot of money can be left on the table, and that's change order management. I'm going to demonstrate this skill live and show you what's behind it so you can see how workflow first thinking turns AI into something that actually can save you hours every week rather than just giving you half the answer. And if you've watched my last video on why generic AI fails in construction, this helps fix that. So to show you what workflow first AI looks like, I'm going to use a workflow every contractor knows, and it's change orders. So let's imagine you're on a project and something comes up that's different from the original contract scope. So let's say the owner wants something added, the engineer revises the design, or your crew hits some unforeseen conditions in the ground. The additional scope is a change, and it requires a formal process, documentation, justification, pricing, and an approval from the client. The process is a change order, or variation as we would call it in New Zealand. It's how contractors get paid for work that wasn't in the original scope. And here's the problem. They're often poorly documented, poorly tracked, and sometimes just flat out missed. And that's just because things are so busy. So a change happens on site, the team is busy, the paperwork doesn't get done, and weeks later, you're trying to recover costs you never formally notified on. And that leads to lost revenue often. So first, let's take a look at the current workflow. And then I'll run through that and we can take a look at how AI can help do a lot of the heavy lifting. So let's imagine your foreman calls you at 9 a.m. saying, hey, we've started trenching on the stormwater line on the east side and we've hit a buried concrete pad. Looks like an old foundation. It's right on the pipe alignment and not sure on the size yet because we can't see it, but it's 200 mil thick and it's reinforced. So we've stopped work in that area. That's an unforeseen site condition. And the geotech report said it was native clay. The contract drawings show a clear pipe run. Nobody knew this was in the ground. So this is when the clock starts ticking. And you know your contract says you need to provide a prompt written notice of differing site conditions. Miss it and you risk waiving your right to claim additional costs. The contract is specific. You must notify before disturbing the condition further so the client or engineer can inspect it. The next thing, so what do? Well, you pull out the contract. You find the changes clause. You remind yourself of the notice requirements and the deadlines, and then you draft a formal letter referencing the right sections and explaining why it constitutes a different site conditions and what the contract documents indicated versus what you actually found, and reference the geotech report. Then you can assess the impact you need to remove this pad before you can go and lay the pipe, which means investigating concrete cutting, removal, and disposal. That's additional labor, equipment, and materials, not in the original scope. And then you also need to figure out the pricing approach. Is this going to be time and materials while you deal with it, or does the client want a lump sum quote before you proceed? So there's a ton of stuff in here. And then here's what most people will do is they'll open ChatGPT and they'll type something like, I'm a civil contractor working on a stormwater project. My crew hit a buried concrete pad while trenching for a stormwater line. The geotech report said it was native clay, and I need to send a change order to notify the client. Can you help me draft one? And then ChatGPT may ask for some follow-up questions, and it'll give you a generic answer that'll sound professional, but it doesn't reference your actual contract clauses. It doesn't know your notice deadline, and it doesn't know your templates either, so it doesn't know what format to put it in. So essentially, what you end up doing is spending 30 minutes, and you end up with a mediocre draft that's not really useful. And that's more of what we'd call the question-based approach. And it's fine for generic stuff. There's still a use case for that. But for real construction workflows, you need to be thinking in terms of the actual workflow it goes through. Because at the end of the day, it is repetitive. You've done this 1,000 times. So the fix, instead of asking AI to think, you give it the workflow to follow. So you already know how to manage a change order. You've done it hundreds of times. And the steps are in your head. The fix is getting those steps out of your head and into a structure AI can execute on consistently. And that structure is called a skill. But it's more than just a prompt. It's a complete package. The skill.md is the brain. So MD just being marked down, it's literally just text. So you can read what the skill is. And it tells the AI exactly how to handle each task in the workflow and where to find what information when it needs it. And these are all separate files, and that's deliberate. The AI doesn't load everything into its memory at once. The procedure or the skill.md tells it where to look when it needs something specific. So if it say it needs to draft a notice, only then will it read the notice template, and then it will check on things like your markup rates, and then it can reference to the company policy or project contract when it needs those, not all at the start. And this keeps the AI focused and accurate instead of trying to juggle everything at once and just completely blowing its context window. So to do this, you set it up as a Claude project for your specific construction project. And what you do is you upload your contract, your geotech report, project drawings, and some context about the projects in the description. And then now the AI has your skill that you've already created and your project specific documents. So every output references your contract clauses, your rates, your project details, and your company details, as well as your templates. And the results from that is consistent, professional, contract compliant output every time. Not hoping the AI gives you something useful and you keep following up on, but you've defined the entire workflow and then you've given it context on your specific project. Great, so now you can see we're inside my Claude desktop app here, and we've gone to the customize settings, and this is some of the skills that I have. And you can see what I'm talking about in terms of it's more than just a markdown file or text, is that this is the core description of what the change order actually is. And then you can see the core skill.md file is this, and this is the set of instructions that's been given to the AI that it follows every time. And it tells it how to provide the output and then where to look for the information that it needs. And you can see what I mean by it's a package. Skill.md, under here is some references. And in the references, we have a templates folder and the company, in this case, a company policy markdown. So this is just, again, a bunch of text where the AI can look at what your policies are for information it may need when it's doing work for you. And then on top of that, to ensure the output is the most useful, is a reference template section. So in here, I've got things like a change order log template, the notice letter template, and the time material tickets. You can put whatever it might need for this section in there. And this way, when it's going through and using the skill, it's got the core output that you want and how to do it. And then it's got the references that it may need. In this case, I've just put a company policy just for the demo. And then it's got some templates for your company. And again, this is just very simplified for the demo, but you can see the power of putting this all together. And now we'll jump in and I'll show you this skill in use for a made up scenario. So now I've opened up a project within inside Claude, and this is for the demo I'm doing today, which is a made up project called the Riverside Development Project. And all I've given it for now is the contract and the geotech report. Now, in reality, you'd add a bunch more documents that are relevant to your project to keep it up to date and things like that. And you'd also have a bunch of chat window about different questions you may be asking about it. And I haven't even given it any instructions in this case because for the demo, I don't need to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy in essentially the scenario we've come across on site, and I'm going to ask it to use the change order skill that I've created to create a change order notice for this scenario. And I've just given them exactly what the form has given us. And then when I hit enter, it's going to go away and start the process. Now, it's going to take a little bit of time because it's got a lot of steps to work through. And you can see it's gone through and picked up that I want to use the change order skill first. So it's reading that and seeing what's relevant and going through those steps it needs to go through. And carrying on, it's we're going to keep working through. And now it's checking on the notice letter template. So it is better understanding the exact requirements we need before it even starts to create the answer. And then it's reading a built-in skill, which is how to create a Word document. And that's because I've specified the output to be a Word document. So I can go in there, review and edit it before sending. And now you can see it's got everything that's needed and it's gone through the workflow to determine the assessment. And it's actually still working, but here, because inside the skill, I've actually prompted it to give me some summary information so that I have it to reference back to. You can see it's giving me the assessment type and why it's clear in the what the basis are for in the contract, and it's clear that in the geotech report there's obviously not going to be a concrete pad in there. It's giving me some key information on the deadline and that the consequences if the notice is late, and just a ton of useful information that I can refer back to and understand where I sit with this. And you can see now it's creating a clean draft of the notice letter that I'll be able to send to the client after reviewing it. And it'll be in my template that I've given it. And for this instance, because it's just a demo, I've given it a very simple template, but it does have everything you need. Cool, so now the document's popped up and we can see the preview of it here. And you can tell the scope assessment that it's giving us some more information on what its view of the situation is, and the notice deadline pricing approach is recommended, and the things that you need to do alongside this notice to ensure that you're following the contract requirements. And obviously photos of that is a key part of it. And then requesting the owner come inspect it. And then once you get authorization to proceed, to start the time and material ticket tracking, and then mark of the drawing showing the location relative to the pipe. So very useful to kind of know your next steps. And even more useful is here we have the draft change order that's in the template I've given it. And it's got, because it has that template, it has all the information I need to actually be able to go ahead and review it, maybe change anything I don't like the look of, and then send it out. So as you can see here, it's filled out, given the notice, the description of the change, and it's given the contract basis. And yeah, it's got everything we need with full detail ready to send off. And you can see I can edit the supporting documentation that I'm actually going to send through with it. So that is a way more powerful output than some text you're going to copy and paste into your own template. And it gets you a long way of the way there. Now, the cool thing about skills as well is they're shareable throughout a company. So you can, because they're just a markdown file, or they'll be a zip file in this case, you can share them around. We've created a bunch of skills inside of Contractor OS that you can simply download and install and have them working inside your business or for your own work. Now, this one isn't in there yet because we go through a pretty strict process on making sure the skills that are uploaded are very thorough and do the job really well. This one I've put together for the demo. So if you do want this, then jump into Contractor OS and send me a message, and I'll move this one up the chain so that it's out to you as soon as, and I'd love to see you in there. And further to this, in terms of skills, is that you can edit and refine them over time. So if it keeps doing something that's annoying to you or doesn't quite work for you, then you just simply update the skill with that. You don't have to rewrite it, you just update the skill. So you can refine it over time. Now, this is just one of so many workflows in construction where you can get AI to do a bunch of the heavy lifting and, most importantly, do it well. Now, I'm going to go on a quick aside here with what is now Claude Cowork and coming on the scene, and the power of this is getting even greater. Not only can you link to project folders so it can stay current on the project and its updates and your emails and basically anything, but you can also do things like update the change order register with its status. Plus, it can keep updating that as it progresses. Really, with Cowork and those kind of systems, the sky's the limit. So it can do things like have the draft saved in a folder where you need it. And this is really starting to tread on the toes of automation tools like Made.com and Zapier. But at the moment, I think the limitation is more with the needs without more infrastructure wrapped around it. At this stage, it's kind of really only applicable on a personal level. And then here's the key to making this work well. At every stage, there's a human's checkpoint. So the AI drafts a notice, then you review it before it goes out. Or the AI generates the pricing, but you check the numbers before it gets submitted. This is the smart way to essentially chain skills together or tasks in a workflow so that the human is steering it to the specified output you need, and you're not sending something out that's risky, could cost you money without having double checked it. It just does the grunt work for you. And so that's how a workflow first approach to AI can work for construction. You stop asking it the AI generic questions and you start thinking about your workflows in your business that eat up your time, and then structure them in a way so that AI can run it for you while you implement importing checks and keep it in line. And this approach works for change orders, but it's repeatable for any process in your business. And that's exactly what we're building at Contractor OS. It's a library of these skills, pre-built, tested, and ready to download and plug into your project, like change orders, contract review, data reporting, and way more. The link is in the description. Also, subscribe if this was useful and drop a comment on what workflow in your business you would want to turn into an AI skill.